Hello, and welcome to our session on optimizing your ILL service by combining OCLC's automated request manager with Iliad. My name is Jenny Rosenfeld. I'm a product manager in resource sharing at OCLC, and I'm joined today by.
Hi, I'm Sarah Jewell. I'm the Access Services Program Manager at Atlas Systems, and I work very closely with the product team for future development of Iliad.
Great, and together we can show you how to use automation if you are an Iliad user to get it set up on both the Iliad and the OCLC sides. So I'll start by talking a little bit about what is ARM anyway. You might hear us reference ARM, that stands for Automated Request Manager. It allows you to decide how requests get processed, which means which requests match on an automation and which lenders you send them to, or what you want the system to do with the request. Think about it as a way to speed up your basic ILL processing so that you have more time for the more complicated things. It helps your users get their materials quickly, and it is the only way for you to get smart lender strings. What's a smart lender string? Well, smart lender strings are strings that are built with automation. That's the only way you get them. And they take into account a lot of things that you can't necessarily see all by yourself if you were looking at an interface. And even if you were looking behind the scenes and trying to gather these pieces of information, automation can do it faster. So it would remove lenders who might deflect. It looks at electronic license content. It knows about WorldCat knowledge base holdings, which you can't currently see in Iliad, and in the coverage ranges as well. So not just which titles libraries have access to, but what date ranges and volumes they have. It knows about print serial holdings, including local holdings records if lenders have set those up. It can process custom holdings groups and profiled groups in a custom holdings path that you create so that you can tell the system where to send your request. It also takes into account turnaround time. So it knows the average turnaround time for copy requests and the average turnaround time for loan requests for each lender because we've got so much data about our system. And it can sort those lenders to put the faster ones earlier in the lender string. It also takes into account load leveling. So if a typically fast lender suddenly has way more volume than usual, the system can deprioritize them a bit so as to not overtax the quick lenders in the system. Before you get started with automation, there are just a few things that you would want to check out to make sure that they're in good condition, because you'll need to know where to send your requests or how to build a lender string. And to do that, you need a custom holdings path. You can use custom holdings groups, which you create. Those are specific just to your library. You can also use OCLC profiled groups, which are shared across all of OCLC. And those groups have things in common like long lending periods or libraries that don't charge each other, like Elvis, or libraries that supply film requests for free, like our film group. There are lots of different profiled groups. You can see them in the policies directory. You can also combine custom holdings groups and profiled groups in any order that you specify. And the order matters because automation will build the lender string in the order you specify, looking at lenders from just the first group in your path first before it moves on to any subsequent groups. You'll also want to make sure that you have good constant data records so that you can specify the shipping address where things should be sent to, your max cost that you're willing to pay for a lending request, and any additional billing information. And on the screen here, you can see the short URL that you can use about getting started with OCLC automation. Once you're ready to go and you can add a basic automation, this gets set up in service configuration under WorldShare ILL and then Automated Request Manager. You'll see the Add New button on the right side of the screen. Click that to set up a basic automation. Our recommendation is usually one automation for copies and one for loans. But if you're just getting started and you want to try one or the other first, that's also fine. This example shows you how to configure a basic copy automation. There are certain things that are required. You'll see them with asterisks, like the name. You'll name the automation. You'll also need to assign a priority. Priorities are important because if you have multiple automations and a request comes in that matches more than one automation, this is your way of telling the system which one you want the system to process. So automations with a lower number, lower priority score get processed first. And each request can only be acted on by one automation. You'll specify matches, which are what a matching request should look like. There are different options here, but for this example, we could just match on a request type of copy. And then the actions section is where you tell the system what you want it to do with matching requests. Here we've picked to apply constant data, and when you pick that option, you'll see a second drop-down box appear that has a list of all of your library's constant data records in alphabetical order. Pick the one that applies to the situation you're setting up. Here I picked copy. And then you can add another action. Here we picked send request to lenders. And then you can specify the minimum number of lenders in your custom holdings path that should have the item before the system sends it out. One is usually fine. You only need one lender to supply something. And then you'll be asked to pick your custom holdings path. And again, it'll be your library's specific list of custom holdings paths in alphabetical order, so you can pick which one you want. The exception section you can set up or not set up. Generally, we recommend you could pick the if held by my institution, move to review. That keeps you from sending requests out for items that you could supply from your local collection. If that's not a concern, you don't have to set your automation up with that exception. Once you've set these up, you can save it, and then you will see your new automation displayed. And it's a pretty easy to read format. You can see what this does. It's called send copies. It matches on all request type of copies. And if it matches, it moves it to review if it's held by your institution. Otherwise, it sends it to lenders as long as at least one lender in the custom holdings path called copies holds the item, and it applies the constant data record called copy. So again, the recommendation would be two basic automations. We just walked through the one for copies. You see that second one there, send copies. You could also set up one for loans, send loans at the top. It does the same thing. It matches on a request type of loans. And this one sends it to the custom holdings path called favorite lenders and applies the loan constant data record. So that is the basics of how to set up ARM in the OCLC side. I will hand it over to Sarah to talk about what this looks like in ILLiad.
Thank you, Jenny. And we're going to talk about how you set things up in ILLiad as well as what the processing would look like in ILLiad. So let's say that you already have ARM or direct request set up. I have some examples here of what a successful and a failed send through ARM would be, or also known as direct request in ILLiad. If it's successful, it will import the ILL number and add a lending string to the request. If it's failed, there are several different reasons it can fail. If it doesn't even send over to OCLC at all, that could be because you're missing something like the ISSN number or OCLC number for it to identify. If it's gone through ARM and couldn't be filled, then it will add that information to the notes saying that it went through, and this will actually go into either awaiting request processing if you're prior to the Connection Manager 9.2.4 update, or it will go to awaiting ARM manual review if you're after that Connection Manager update. And here's an example of what it would look like when it adds those statuses. And then you can see for the failed. Now we're going to talk a little bit about ILLiad configuration. When you're setting up ARM or direct request in ILLiad, you need to make sure that you set the direct request enabled key to yes. And even if you have this set to yes, that doesn't mean requests are automatically going to start sending off to ARM or direct request. You do need to make sure that you have a queue, either in awaiting or in your custom queues, you can add awaiting direct request sending or awaiting ARM sending, and that will allow you to manually route to this queue to send off to OCLC, or you can add routing rules. And this is where it will appear if you add it to your custom queues. You'll be able to go to route and then all the way to the bottom where all your custom queues are on a request form. Routing rules are not required. As I mentioned, you can just manually route, but it does make things a lot easier. And you do need to make sure you have either an ISBN or an OCLC number. And we highly recommend having these rules lower in your list to send over, but also just account for, you might want to have a rule for loans and a rule for copies, so that way you can kind of separate out when they go in the process. For example, if you're going to send through Rapid first, you might want to go ahead and just send loans over to OCLC, but then have your copies go through Rapid. And if they can't be filled, then you can send them through direct request to OCLC. Here's an example basic routing rule, and you can find these in our documentation at support.atlas-sys.com. This is just a basic loan rule, and if you want to use this for articles, you can just replace the request type. I did mention earlier that there was a new Connection Manager update 9.2.4. Once you are updated to this version, it allows for more complex routing of requests to Iliad. For example, requests can go over to OCLC and then come back to Iliad, and still you can re-import these requests back into OCLC. One of the advantages of that is it allows you to break up the process. So there's an ARM match key, which for the sake of time, I'm not going to dive too deep into it. But if you do want to learn more about ARM match, I recommend checking out the documentation that I mentioned earlier. But it allows you to match on a particular automation, no matter where it is in the process. So you can break things up. For example, let's say you want to send to the Express program first. Let's say you send to the Express program. If they can't possibly find fulfillment in a lender string for that, you can have it pass back to Iliad to process through other avenues. And if you can't fill it in Iliad, you could send back over to OCLC and go through any other ARM automations you may have. That kind of just allows for a breakup of workflows to manage how you would like. The other thing is you can have the opportunity to review the lending string that is added to the history table on the request form.
Thanks for all that information, Sarah. We have some help for you if you'd like to get started and you're not sure what to do. We do what we call automation tune-ups. You can request a meeting with both Sarah and I, or with people from Atlas and people from OCLC. Can't always guarantee it'll be the two of us, but on the OCLC side, we'll help you configure those automations in ARM that we looked at, review any custom holdings and constant data questions. Then, of course, on the Atlas side, you can look at your routing rules and custom queues and set up new routing rules and workflows based on some of the options that Sarah talked about. If you'd like to get started with that, you can send an email to OCLC resource sharing at oclc.org, and we're happy to set up a call with you. Thank you for your time and enjoy the rest of the conference.